Hi, Brooke. It's wonderful to
Hello.
have you on the Everyday Mystic.
I'm so excited to be here. I was so attracted to the name of the podcast, The Everyday Mystic, because I didn't even know what a mystic was until I kind of went on my own journey of discovery, of what that meant for me. So I was like, oh, this is my vibe.
I love that because that is exactly what the Everyday Mystic is about. It's about that spark of discovery that happens for us when we're not necessarily religious scholars and have studied the ancient mystical texts. It's all about this experience of mysticism, which has its own set of definitions, but the experience of God, the experience of a source consciousness and a creative consciousness outside of ourselves that we discover, often stumble into through
Yes,
life.
yes, that is
And
exactly my experience. Yeah.
that to me is really where all of the magic and the juice and the excitement is, because we all can have it. We can all experience it. We all absolutely are set up to have these experiences. It's just whether or not we let them in, or whether or not life, we're really truly called to it to the point of where there's no other choice. I find that the scholarly conversations around mysticism just don't quite hit home for me. So tell us about how you fell into all of this. What was your discovery of mysticism?
I like how you said you stumble into it. It's like because there is no other choice. The choices have left at that point, because I was raised in a cult. So it was very controlling. And I grew up in that environment as a child. And my father was also kind of like that narcissistic personality where he was also kind of that authoritarian figure. And, we had to fear him just like we had to fear God and the religion that we were taught. We were taught what we were to say, what we were to wear, what we could read, who we could hang out with. Like it was very, very controlling. And so that dynamic played out in my everyday family life. And so there was this overall sense of fear that constantly just ran through my life, and also having to feel the disappointment of never being enough for my father or never being enough for God. And that's really what this religious doctrine kind of threw at you. You just felt like, oh, I'm just always going to be sinful. I'm always going to be broken. I'm never going to be enough for God. I've got to keep trying. I've got to keep striving, or I'm not going to make it on the other side. And that's really what they're preaching to their followers. And I didn't know anything different. And so, as a teenager, I became very rebellious, and I wanted to kind of fight. I wanted to fight the system. I wanted to go against what I was being constricted. And that just led me into the arms of an abuser. I left my family home just to kind of fall into that same cycle all over again. And I stayed in that relationship for 17 years.
I just had a question about
Yeah.
with that first relationship. Was that somebody also in the cult, or had you at that point broken free from the cult?
No, it was still within the cult because, you're taught you can't look outside of the cult. You're supposed to marry within the cult. And so I did stay true to that religious belief. And so I married within the cult. And I didn't realize, that I was in this very toxic relationship, and I was playing out these very wounded stories that we both held inside when we were just it was this space that we just couldn't heal in. We couldn't, but we held on, so tightly, just the classic trauma bonded codependent relationship playing out in all of these things. And then I started to awaken. I started to awaken first that I was in a narcissistic relationship, that I was being abused. I started to see, I was like, whoa, wait a second, something's not right here. And I started to do the research. I started to get the knowledge. And literally at the same time as I was awakening from this, my then husband was awakening from the cult. And he was opening the doors to all of the realities that we had no idea that even existed, and how we had been lied to like our entire lives. We had been lied to, and we had no idea. And so in that moment, I began to question and doubt everything, the relationship, the religion. And so I just obviously it took much longer than this, and it was a much more grueling, suffering process. But I left both at the same time. I left the religion, I left the relationship, and I began this journey of discovery of trying to find my way of, okay, now I've lost my whole identity. All I had was being a mother. I had two boys. And so that's all I had. It's all I existed on. And I was angry. I was so angry at God. I felt so betrayed, just so betrayed. And that's when I kind of just chalked it up to maybe there is no God. I got very angry and I felt very like I needed to stay in denial. That was like my protection of like, if I don't look at this and I don't feel any of this stuff and I just kind of ignore it and suppress it and walk away from it, I don't really have to deal with it. But of course, our baggage always is chasing us. It's going to catch up to you. And that's exactly what was happening to me. And I was suffering from complex PTSD, severe anxiety. I was going to psychiatrists and I was going to therapy and I was trying to go through this process. But nothing was really taking hold. I was really hitting my head against a brick wall. And then in 2020, my now ex-husband died tragically from an overdose. And so that rocked my whole world, my whole entire world. I had known him since I was 15, regardless of how our relationship went. There was love there, it was grief, it was watching my children grieve. It was like a thousand deaths having to feel this pain and the suffering. And that kind of awakened me to be like, okay, what's really happening here? I was told this about what happens when people die, and now I want to discover what happens when people die because now I don't know what to believe. And I can't believe that he's just gone because that's what we're really told. Like he's just asleep, he's in the ground, and there's like nothing. There's nothing until God comes and awakens him. And so I began this discovery process and I started to look outside the box. And that was scary for me. But every time that I kind of opened that door to like, okay, I see possibility. People kept coming to me and saying, look at this or read this or watch this. And one thing usually stuck out was the Surviving Death documentary on Netflix. And I was like, okay, I like 4 people have told me to go watch this. I'll go watch this. And it was all about near death experiences. And every one of them seemed like they were the same. I was like, "Wait a second, there's something here. I've gotta dig deeper." And I was in awe of it. I was like, "This is captivating. I never would have thought this was possible." And so I said to the universe, I didn't necessarily pray because at that time I was very triggered by prayer and the word God and all of these things. And I just said, if this is true, I need to hear it from somebody's lips. Send me somebody and let me hear a near death experience. And sure enough, 2 days later, I have my client laying on my bed. I used to be an esthetician. And unprovoked, she tells me her entire story of a near death experience. And I am literally like tears. I'm bawling. I'm just like, oh my God, something heard me. Something was listening. And I don't know how to explain it other than the fact that it felt like this opening within me. It was like love and there was this support and there was this connection that I had never felt before, had never experienced before. And it was like this loving presence. That's all I can say. And that was the minute I knew that this higher power, this universe, like had my back. I had the support and it was there for me. And my answers continued to be received. I continued to be guided on my path. And the teachers and the mentors showed up because I was ready. I was ready to learn. I was ready to understand. And I was ready to create new beliefs for myself. So that was my long version, but short version also of kind of getting to that space.
Exactly right, because everything that you experienced in the day to day and the up and down and the all of the things that go on during an awakening and during, just on this path in general are complex. Simple when you look at the beginning and the end of something. Okay, I had this realization and now I'm here, but I get it. That everything in between, which is all the learning, all of the actual transformation that's happening that then gets you to that end point, which isn't even an end point, right? It's just another point on the path that gets to be the start of something else. And it's beautiful that you finally got to experience what we call God or what we call universal source consciousness or what we call the creator. You got to actually have your own experience of that. What a gift. And that's really what being a mystic is all about, is connecting directly to that energy, connecting directly to that source rather than needing the doctrine and the middleman and the dogma in between that so many religions serve as the answer.
Yes.
And I know people have had beautiful experiences through their religious upbringings, and many more have had these either neutral, just kind of whatever. It wasn't anything is just kind of what we did in our family, to these tragic experiences. And it doesn't have to be that way. We all have this access to all of this divine energy because we are that. So to get to resonate in that is so beautiful. And I'm so happy that it found you. I'm so happy that you said yes, because obviously you could have said no. You could have been like, no, I'm going to go and maybe drink and drug myself numb from all of this, or I'm going to go choose to do 100 other things besides answer this call. But you did, you answered the call, and now you're where you're at. And what a beautiful thing to be able to share with people. And I know you've just written a book that you're sharing these experiences. Tell us a little bit more about what that process was like of writing it. Because I know just in the writing that I've done, it can be extremely cathartic and it's also challenging because it brings up so much.
Yes, it's called Shattered, Broken, and Beautiful for a reason. It came from me definitely like a divine download of this is what the book was meant to be called. I saw the cover of the book and it was this broken butterfly, pieces of this butterfly that kind of had shattered, and recognizing that that's kind of what this awakening journey is kind of shattering old beliefs and letting go of false masks that you had to wear to people please and become who you were to be accepted in your tribe and community, and yet to let those things fall away and really embrace your most authentic self, because that, I believe, is what source consciousness and the divine wants. It's for us to find our authentic self, to love ourselves. And my book was as painful to write as it is to read, which I say because it's like an awakening for someone else that is on the path, that is lost, that is confused, that has had these experiences, that is wanting to understand why they've had these experiences, and to come back into a space where they can choose themselves again. They can understand that everything that happened to them was for a greater purpose. Because I had this mindset for so long of being a victim and having to let go of that victimhood to really embrace, okay, all these things happen for a reason. And when I can love myself through all of these things and realize that it got me to where I am today to be the person that I am, it gets easier to swallow the more difficult things, even though you have to feel them all, right? It's all part of the process. But writing, it was cathartic, but it was painful, but it was also healing. And also, I knew the message wasn't just for me. When I originally sat down to write it, it was like, this is how I'm going to heal. I'm just going to write this story and I'm going to let it all out here. And then I realized that it was not just for me, and it was for a bigger purpose than me. And I had to accept that I had to stop blocking it from being birthed into the world, because I was afraid to release this and feel this rawness of my story, and how, perhaps there was shame there was embarrassment of not knowing better, of making really poor decisions in life because I didn't know any better, and the growth process. So I think it's about being able to be raw and vulnerable and know, you know what, people are going to judge you anyway. Just show up anyway, because someone needs to hear your story. Someone needs to know what you have to say, because they're hurting, they're suffering.
And that's the most beautiful path that I think we can all take, is to just be that reflection of pain, but also love, reflection of the challenging and difficult times, but also the healing, and be able to show that to others and reflect that out so that they can see themselves in it. So I love that you wrote your book that way. And what you said really stuck out to me about how it's painful to read. Sometimes in the healing space, the spiritual space, people will discourage you talking about your stories, like, oh no, you've got a new story now, right? You've reframed, you've got a new story, focus on that. But the telling of the old stories are beautiful wake-up calls, as you said, or beautiful reflections for that reader, for something that could completely be the thing that triggers them and puts them on the path and opens them up to the healing. We all get delivered those things. Yours got delivered in, the death of your ex and that tragedy, as well as just awakening to the fact that you were in a cult and questioning that whole thing. It's like, we get delivered these messages all the time, often comes in these rock bottom moments. Some people, it's like when they wake up in a hospital or they get fired or, the love of their life divorces them, whatever it is. Those wake up calls are often necessary, aren't they, for us to actually go, there's more than what I was fed and told and programmed into. So if your book can be that wake up call through the story, I think that's beautiful. And what a way to spin what you went through to then be able to help others with it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely my purpose. For so long, I felt this drive to continue to move forward on my journey because I was like, I have suffered. I have suffered, right? And I really attached after leaving the cult and kind of coming into my own psychic mediumship abilities to the new age spirituality, which was like all positive love and light. And I was like, okay, well, I can't think any negative thoughts. Like, because that's
Right.
what
You're like, I'm going to manifest negative things if I think negative.
yes, like because that's what they sell. And I realized I was just buying into a new form of bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just the truth. It's the truth of it. But that's not what this human experience is about. Yes, we are meant to rewrite, like you said, retell your story, write your story, but you're also meant to own what happened to you. And you're supposed to feel the grief and the anger and the sadness and the pain that you felt because it's like all in your body. And if you don't allow yourself to express it, we're just suppressing it. It's why our society is sick. It's why we have autoimmune conditions. It's why we're struggling with our mental health because we have forgotten the essence of what being human is. And that means that we are meant to feel every emotion. We are meant to ride the roller coaster of these emotions instead of avoid, distract, numb, or absolutely avoid them at all costs. And it's not serving us anymore. And I think that's why there's so many right now on the planet trying to awaken others, trying to help us come back into our essence, to find the mysticism in the everyday, to find your connection to God. Because you're right, we have it right here, right now. And I didn't realize that until I had, stumbled upon it, but we all have that access. It's been taken away from us. It's been programmed out of us, indoctrinated out of us. It's been told, nope, you have to do it through this person and only this person
Yep.
knows
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. And the feelings really are our superpower to be able to indicate to us. They're brilliant in showing us the way, in guiding us in our lives. And the suppression of that is evil. I think that not having access to your emotions, which are these powerful indicators of what's going on, both in the world and in your fields, and not being able to understand life that way and just be focused up here in the mind and in the brain is, yeah, it's a tragedy because we're so cut off then from universal intelligence, all that is available to us. So stepping into your psychic gifts sounds like you really leaned into, okay, I'm going to open up and feel the fullness of what's available for me here. How was that for you? Did things just start flooding in? What was that change like?
Yes, it was extremely overwhelming. I can't even explain it. I had been taught, obviously, that psychics were evil, demonic, growing up in this religion. And it was very obviously you couldn't do it. It was Satan's work. And so the minute that after my ex-husband died, that awakening really started to happen for me. I started to like have this process of my third eye opening and I didn't really even know what was happening to me. I started to have these visions, very vivid visions, and I didn't understand anything. And the more that I didn't understand, the more, I was kind of fearful. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I losing my mind? Am I going crazy here? The teachers just started to show up and they're like, no, that's not what's happening here for you. Your psychic gifts are just coming online. You have these gifts. You've had them in other lifetimes. This is here for you now. And we all have these gifts. It's just, we're not open to them, all of us, right? We've been closed off. We've been suppressed. So our intuition is quiet, if non-existent, and not having that connection. And so once those opened up and I started to feel into those, I leaned into it, even though I was afraid. I was just like, you know what, I'm going to take courage here and I'm going to be afraid and I'm going to do it anyway. And the teachers just showed up and I learned what they taught me. This is what this means for you, and how you can use it and how you can kind of harness this power for good, because it is a sacred gift. I feel like it's a sacred gift that's we're given from God to use, and I use it in my work. I'm not the psychic that you come and see your future. I can see those things, but that's not who I am. What I am is helping you to find your wounds, to find the deepest, darkest parts of self that have been abandoned, and healing those parts of yourself so that they're not operating your life anymore, but yet you're becoming this more integrated person, more knowing that you're whole, because these fragmented parts just, they kind of split off when we have these traumatic moments. And that's the gift that I've been given, is to be able to see those and to help you move through those more quickly.
And isn't it more valuable? Because if we're seeing a future, that future is one of limitless possibilities.
Yeah.
So it's really about what's happening now that will then shape that. So probably, and I don't know, maybe you have a different take on this. My take on it, being able to see into future is just one future. And it's kind of the future that's the path that's current. But if that person starts to really do deep work and change and go and address those wounds and really change the path that they're on, then that changes the destination, changes the outcome of where they're headed. So it's all this quantum shifting essentially that's going on as people do this deep work that goes beyond just the surface. I mean, I think even small changes in our daily lives, it doesn't have to be these massive, huge things, but even small changes that are in service to our soul, that we feel from within, and then we connect to this greater, like you said, I think those are really the clear indications that you're on the right path, of when the teachers show up or the book arrives or you keep seeing and hearing this thing. It's like, okay, that's meant for me. That's meant for me. And I'm on the right path. So when those things show up for us, these are the signposts telling us we're on the right path.
Yeah.
So it could be just the smallest shifts that you're making, but those shifts are big because they are coming from this deeper inner knowing, rather than thinking like, oh, we have to go and completely change up our life and our world. Unless you're called to that, it's not necessarily your next best step, right? It's going to be whatever next best step that comes from within, truly getting back to connecting to, both in the feeling, both in the psychic ability, both in that just stillness and silence that we spend with ourselves. Connecting back into ourselves is a sacred act. It is that devotion to the divine of when we get to spend that kind of time. So these gifts came in, you had teachers that helped guide you. What do you do now to cultivate them and to continue to build that trust in them? What are the things that you do that help you stay connected to all of that? Because it's so easy, isn't it, to get distracted away, or for the shiny objects of this earthly plane to come in and try to like steal our attention.
Yes, for sure. It is a balance, because I feel like I can also get lost in the spiritual dimensions and realms and kind of get very lost into that and not really be present here in my human experience. And so it is a balance of sorts, but what I call it is it's my church. And when you talked about sitting in stillness and sitting in silence, that I cannot say is the most powerful thing that I have ever done on my journey, is learn how to meditate, to sit with myself, to process everything that came up in the day, or what triggered me, or what did I feel, or even if I can't process it in the moment, writing it down and then coming back to it and being curious. And that's what I find is the sacred act too, is curiosity, having an open-minded to space to say, okay, what needs to transform here within me? Why do I always feel this same feeling or this same pattern? Why is what's here? What is here? Like, why is it showing me this? And that's how I connect back to those gifts, because I always see the pattern for what it is when I sit in that stillness, and I can then heal more of myself. Because if we don't sit in stillness, like you said, we're distracted. And we have busy lives. We are literally bombarded by so much now, more than we ever have centuries and centuries ago, to keep us kind of into we got to keep the hustle culture and we've got to go and we got to pay attention to what everybody's saying. But it drowns out your own truth. It drowns out what actually is needing to be felt. And this is free, guys. You can do this on your own every day. You don't need, I always want to teach my women that I work with, you are your best guide, right? I'm here just to kind of shine a flashlight on your path so I can help you get clear, so I can help you get the clarity that you need. But at the end of the day, I'm teaching you how to learn how to be your best advocate, your most trusted partner, your most wise healer. It's all here. And that's where I want women to see. I want them to see their own agency, their own ability, because I think, for myself, I got lost in the kind of looking up to the woman that was, oh, she's more psychic than me. She knows the answer more than me, or she knows my path more than I do. And I realized that what I was being asked to do was to just see that I knew. I already knew. I just had to sit still to figure it out.
This has been such a beautiful conversation, Brooke. I'm so happy that we got to hear some of your story, but more importantly, hear from you that these things that we do are simple. They are hard to do. Like sitting still is actually hard to do, but it's so, so simple and leads to such profound openings. And I think the most profound thing leading back to, as you said, agency of self, trust in ourselves, trust in that inner voice, trust that we are our best guides. Before we get to final thoughts, where can people find your book and find you and connect into all of the beautiful gifts you have to share?
Lifecoachinggoddess.com is my website, and Shattered, Broken, and Beautiful will be up there. Launches March 25th. So if you're interested in it, you guys can grab a copy then. But yeah, they're able to find me on any of the social media channels as Life Coaching Goddess.
I can't wait to read your book. It sounds incredible. Sounds like a beautiful catalyst for people. And congratulations on that and getting it out there and facing your fears. That's the biggest thing, right? To just, you did it. You did it.
Yeah. Celebrating that, celebrating facing the fears, because that's big work.
Yeah. If someone came to you today who was leaving or trying to leave a narcissistic cult or relationship that they had woken up in, because I think that's probably what it feels like, right? You're just like, what the heck? How did I get here? And then you realize all of that happened to get me here. So someone's woken up into that. What advice would you give them as the first thing to do, first step to take?
I would say get support. I hesitated on getting support because I did the classic trauma response. Oh, I can figure this out on my own. I don't need anybody else. I can figure it out on my own. But it kept me in the suffering longer. And so I always tell people support and knowledge, educate yourself, because that's going to be your greatest ally. And knowing that what your truth is your truth, because you're going to be able to use your critical thinking and use that intuition to kind of start to create that process and learning for yourself. But no, it's possible. It can be really scary in the beginning. It can feel like this mountain you're going to have to climb, and it's going to be like the most impossible thing you've ever done. But it is possible, and that you are capable.
Thank you so much, Brooke.
Yes. Thank you for having me here today.